Welcome to the Women's Heart Health Summit. I'm your host, Dr. Mark Menolascino, Medical Director of the Meno Clinic in Jackson Hole, Wyoming. This is your chance to hear from the world's experts on how to achieve optimal health, optimal vitality, and prevent heart disease. We're joined today by one of my mentors, one of my friends, and someone who I think you'll really enjoy, Dr. Kara Fitzgerald.
Hey, folks. Mark, I'm so glad to be here with you.
Well, thank you so very much, and it'll be fun talking with you. Let me tell our viewers a little bit about you. Kara Fitzgerald, ND, received her Doctor of Naturopathic Medicine degree from the National University of Natural Medicine in Portland, Oregon. She completed the first Council on Naturopathic Medicine accredited postdoctorate position in nutritional biochemistry and laboratory science at Metametrics Clinical Laboratory, which is now Genova Diagnostics, under the direction of her mentor, Dr. Richard Lord. Her residency was completed at Progressive Medical Center, a large integrated medical practice in Atlanta, Georgia. Dr. Fitzgerald is the lead author and editor of Case Studies in Integrative and Functional Medicine and is a contributing author to Laboratory Evaluations for Integrative and Functional Medicine, and is also a contributor to the Institute for Functional Medicine's Textbook for Functional Medicine. Most recently, with Romilly Hodges, she authored the ebook, The Methylation Diet and Lifestyle, and Dr. Fitzgerald has published numerous articles in peer-reviewed journals. She's on the faculty of the Institute for Functional Medicine, is also an Institute for Functional Medicine certified practitioner, and lectures globally to many doctors on functional medicine. She's a clinician researcher for the Institute for Therapeutic Discovery, and Dr. Fitzgerald runs a clinical development program for professionals, as well as maintaining an active blog and podcast series on her website. Her clinical practice is in Sandy Hook, Connecticut. And again, thank you so much, Dr. Kara, for joining us.
Absolutely. I'm thrilled to be here. Thrilled to be looking at that beautiful backdrop, Mark.
Well, thank you. You're always welcome here.
We're coming.
You know, one of the things I've always enjoyed when we talk is I listen to you. You're a mentor to me. You're a mentor to other doctors.
Thank you.
You're someone who's comfortable talking to clients, to physicians, to people all over the realm, and you're academic and clinical. And that's a tough role for many people to play. How do you balance those two?
You know, it's funny, when you were reading my bio, I was like, oh, good Lord, there's too much going on. I love the academic end. I mean, I just consider myself to be remarkably blessed to have gotten to basically, sit at the feet of Dr. Richard Lord, one of the key nutritional biochemists in our field, and learn from him. And I still do. And, and likewise with Dr. Jeff Bland. I mean, I saw him speak when I was a student and was absolutely wowed. And that influenced my choice to go into laboratory science as a focus. But there's translating that for clinical application, actually, as you and I have done, in the journal club, when we get together with our peers and we really metabolize the science and think about how we can bring it into the functional medicine paradigm and actually doing that. So really, ultimately, all of this background work, all of the academic piece is for us to be able to better serve our patients. I mean, that's the bottom line. So if I'm not actually with patients and in that encounter, it's not as satisfying. So connecting both, making that work is essential. So my actual time with patients is, it's part-time. I'm not seeing patients full-time now, so I can balance that, but I feel very strongly, I feel very nourished by having both of those pieces in my life.
Well, it's exciting, Kara, how the science has caught up to what the naturopaths always knew, that food is medicine.
Right. That leaky gut is a real phenomena, right?
You can actually talk about it.
Yeah, right. We're not total quacks. Yeah.
And so a lot of us that do this work and that are attracted to the deep science of it, there's a story there. There's a reason that we move this direction. Is there one for you?
Well, I think just my, fundamental, essential curiosity forever growing up in my childhood and really having my mom nurture that. She also raised us with, quote unquote health food. I mean, my grandmother read Adele Davis, one of the earliest health pioneers around, and we were all taking brewer's yeast. My mom adopted a lot of those principles, and she would order, you couldn't buy organic food, of course, in the store. I mean, we grew it in our garden, but she would order certain things from Walnut Acres and it would come in the mail. And I was always kind of bummed out because I wasn't really excited as a kid at that time to be eating healthy food. My mom sent me to school with sardines, believe it or
Oh
not.
my
I mean,
gosh.
like that's mean. But you know what? In hindsight, I'm just so grateful. We made our own yogurt, and almond butter and things like that. And I'm just so grateful for her amazing foresight that really ultimately directed my career. One of the early pieces of inspiration when I was pondering medical school or naturopathic medical school, when I was working in a health food store, and I came upon Udo Erasmus's famous book, Fats That Heal, Fats That Kill, and or maybe it's Fats That Kill, Fats That Heal. I can't remember the title exactly, but at any rate, I came across the omega-3, omega-6 biochemistry pathways and was enamored by the prostaglandins and the leukotrienes. I mean, that was probably my first real hit on nutritional biochemistry, and the awareness solidified in me that through food, through what we ingest, we can actually influence this incredibly important cascade that has far-reaching effects, either good or bad, was a big driver for me, not only to opt to go to naturopathic medical college, but to, go on to later pursue more detailed study in nutritional biochemistry.
And it really takes a team to do this, and to see your training and your background. And how much did you enjoy working with the team of people? Was
my
that
gosh,
exciting, and how you feed off of each other?
Always. Yes, absolutely. Yeah, without question. And I've carried that forward into my work in my clinic now. We had what we called the brain trust. I mean, there were at the laboratory, there were just a lot of doctorate level brains hanging around, just smart people, in shouting distance. You could shout down the hall. We used to shout at each other way too much, but so you could get questions answered. And these are people with really rich, curious minds, be them an analytical chemist, running our assays, or us in the education department trying to figure out what these analytes meant. And we were led by Richard Lord and Andy Brawley, who owned the laboratory, was also a PhD, and we had weekly laboratory rounds, and we would, just move through research ourselves and bring in experts to teach us. And that was hugely nourishing to me. In fact, when I left the laboratory, Mark, I had this hole in my heart. I remember I couldn't figure out what was going on. Like, I really felt this big loss. And it was actually talking to a mutual friend of ours, Dr. David Hasse, who is he's a really brilliant functional medicine doc, just sort of spilling my guts. Something is amiss in my world. And I realized that because I didn't have ready access to the brain trust like I had, I was experiencing it as a deep loss. And so from there, I started, what you were a part of is the journal club, where, slowly I just invited our colleagues in to meet and talk and continue the journey once a month. And that was really extremely nourishing to me. And, concurrently in my practice, I set out to create a team of like-minded, curious individuals. So we want to deliver the best care. It's always motivated by delivering the best care to our patients and really understanding what we need to understand and vetting the research. And also being curious and kind of willing to work hard. So I have since created what I left at the laboratory, in my work world.
Well, I think that's so important to have that fire burning like you do. And I think a lot of viewers, they don't realize exactly what level these laboratories are working at. The functional medicine laboratories are working even beyond, I think, it's some of the pharmaceutical laboratories. The quality of the supplements are at a pharmaceutical quality. It's really, we've seen this transition in functional medicine, in nutritional medicine, to really embrace the science, to do the science right, and then to bring the science forward.
Yes.
It's really having people like yourself that can understand both fields of it, and not many people do.
Well, we all work hard. Wouldn't you say, I've got a the clinical development team. So there are physicians who are transitioning who track with us, and it's just like people who are drawn to this do have an essential curiosity and are, willing to dust off those really old, medical biochemistry texts or get new ones. I mean, so many people say to me who are coming into functional medicine, I never thought I would need my medical biochemistry text again. And of course, back when we were in medical school, it was like, you have to learn all these stuff.
Yeah,
right.
That's right. In order to actually enjoy it.
That's exactly. Yeah, that's right. Well, I think in school, even in my training in naturopathic school, the richness of medical biochemistry wasn't drawn out to the extent that I think teachers are now doing, but also, I really got into that nourishment listening to Jeff Bland and my mentor, Richard Lord. So people come to it with a new set of eyes, and
yes.
A lot of our colleagues, I mean, they're willing to do the hard work. I mean, there's a lot of late nights in this field, a lot of time spent reading and studying and, listening to lectures and so forth. I mean, we work hard, I'd say, in here as a general rule.
That's a great point, because I know in medical school we had 2 years of book training and we never saw anything patient-wise. And then all of a sudden we spent the next 2 years all in clinics. So there wasn't the reading of biochemistry with the foundation of what we're actually going to use it for. And that's what
right.
what I hear you saying.
Yeah, that's right. We have this, required foundational book training, and bridging it into real-time application is scant.
Yes.
And we're doing that now. I think we do it in functional medicine on a routine basis.
And you're teaching it. You are taking doctors and teaching them how to be functional doctors, how to successfully run a clinic, but also how to successfully have good outcomes with patients. For the viewers listening, what would be your advice to help them to find someone like that? It's hard.
For how individuals should identify a good functional medicine doc or clinicians training.
Yeah. How do you find someone like you? How do you find someone like me? What?
I know, right?
They're hard.
Well, yeah. I mean, yes. I mean, fortunately, IFM is graduating more and more, certified practitioners. The program is growing.
Doing a great job.
Yeah, I know. It is challenging. I mean, I guess obviously we direct people to the, functionalmedicine.org, and you can look for a practitioner in your neck of the woods, but it is challenging. One of the things I've been doing in my practice, I've got 2 physicians with me now, 2 great MDs, brilliant in functional medicine. But one of the things I can do as clinical director is offer, I'll give little windows of time to patients looking for a clinic so that they can talk to me, free of charge, and see whether or not it resonates. What we have to offer, does it resonate with them? And, so I guess my answer, Mark, is they need to reach out to the practice and see if it works. And I think right now, unfortunately, while there's not enough of us, probably they're going to have to travel. I mean, we do have patients coming to our practices, I'm sure you do, from all over the world.
Yes.
And so that, I think, is one of the requirements if you really want to work with a doctor who you resonate with deeply and you trust.
So as an expert in the clinical and the lab, there's a lot of lab tests that people can do. And do you find that it's helpful for you to do them on the front end to know where to go? Or do you do some of the work first and then do the testing? We've heard speakers kind of be on both sides of that. What's your thoughts of it?
Yeah. Well, you know what? I respect folks who are minimalist with regard to laboratory data. I mean, there are many ways to walk through functional medicine and treat people. I think I'm biased because I've got, I come from a laboratory background, and, over and over and over and over again, I saw the utility of really sophisticated analysis on the front end. So for us in this clinic, we also have a really robust nutrition team, and sometimes they take patients on as standalone people, and they can run some labs themselves. But for us, especially the doctors here, we have our first intake, which is about 2 hours, and that's a real careful history and physical exam, and then we order a battery of testing. And so patients can expect from me that I'm probably going to be casting a reasonably wide net to look under the biochemical hood, and I'll get a combination of standard reference reference labs from like Quest or LabCorp. And then, you know, undoubtedly we're looking at what's happening in the gut. And then I want to look at micronutrients and biomarkers of how micronutrients are functioning in the body. So amino acids and organic acids and fatty acids. And we'll look at hormones if that's indicated in hormone metabolites. So I'd say from the outset, I'm going to cast a pretty wide net mark. And then really that I've got this amazingly rich history from talking with the patient. And then I've got this rich body of laboratory data, which, by the way, the patient comes in for their second visit, or sometimes we'll do it like this in a Zoom conference, and we comb through that. I'm a believer that that people who come to me really deserve to get what's going on. They get to see what's going on underneath the hood there and understand why I'm suggesting diet A, B, and C and supplements, you know, D, E, and F. I want them to really get it, flash on it, be inspired by it, be inspired by the possibility of change. So that's our first two meetings, and then I design the plan. They get the rationale behind the plan. But the cool thing about getting the laboratory data on the front end is that's going to guide our treatment for actually quite a long time. And then I'll have, you know, labs that I'm thinking about later. So for most of my patients, I'm not going to do a say urine metals challenge on the front end. I'm going to do all the underlying functional interventions and clean up the routes of elimination so that their body can start detoxing. And then we'll look at some additional investigations if we need to, like metal status, and you know, we'll dig deeper as it's indicated through our work together. But that front end laboratory data plus history can really take us a good bit of the journey.
Well,
how about you, actually? I'm curious.
Well, I do something similar. There's a couple of things you said that are really important. I would guess 99% of the people viewing have never spent 2 hours in total in their lifetime with a doctor. They probably spent 20 hours waiting for a doctor, but they probably never spent a total of 2 hours face-to-face. The other comment is that I think a lab test is only as good as the person in front of you interpreting it. And so that's where, you know, there's two doctors, one with your background interpreting lab tests, you see a lot more. And I love, one thing you've always taught me is how you like to teach your clients. If a woman has a thyroid problem, why would you not want her to understand the entire story of the thyroid, the T4, the T3, the antibodies, the nutrients that work? And you know, I think you're a great storyteller of that for your clients. You want them to be engaged. You empower them with knowledge and information to help them change their behavior.
It's super inspiring. Medicine. Yeah, and so for people who are called to that, people who want to understand, and I think more and more of our patients get it when they want to be empowered, come here seeking just that. It was interesting because a big lab doing pretty sophisticated panels was really looking to sort of create these turnkey interpretations. You know, their argument was physicians really don't want to know. They just want to have the solution and, you know, be able to, you know, trade it off to their assistant to go get the intervention and prescribe, you know, and I maybe, you know, perhaps I know, right. Well, listen, for being nice, I think there's, you know, we'll be able to treat more people and keep the time and the cost down if we can move things a little bit more expeditiously. So maybe there's a place for that in a certain setting. Our practice here is pretty boutique. I mean, it's very time intensive. So it's going to draw a particular person. But yeah, that would not be satisfying medicine for me.
Well, you know what's interesting is I think what you said is so true, is that we really want everybody to be able to get access to this kind of knowledge. Yeah. And that may be, as much as we don't like Dr. Google, you know, we like empowered patients. And there's a lot that people can do video-wise on Zoom recordings, on webinars. There's a lot of great information out there. And I would just encourage everybody viewing to find someone like Dr. Kara's information, because there's so much out there that you can't trust. And so you need to go to a trusted source. But the new electronic mediums and people using these type of formats really provide an opportunity, I think, to teach. Because that's at the end of the day, you're trying to teach people about their health. Then they can make better decisions.
Yes, that's true. There are a lot of great resources. There's some sketch resources. I mean, we definitely have to be discerning with Dr. Google at our fingertips, but yeah, there's a lot of good resources, and we definitely try to operate with integrity around the content that we put out.
You know, and I think there's probably more misinformation put out about women's health than probably anything else in health. That so many women come to see me with something they heard on the news or saw on the internet or saw in the newspaper.
Yeah.
That's one sentence cut out of a
Yeah.
30-page journal article.
Right.
How do you help guide your clients with those type of questions? Do you provide them resources? How do you help them to guide good information?
Well, I guess it's on a case-by-case basis, but certainly there are many folks who come to me with an idea that one intervention is their magic bullet. And, you know, if it were true.
Yeah.
I mean, how many times in your career have you seen one intervention be a magic bullet? I mean, every
Never.
once in a while. Yeah, right.
Never.
You know that, yeah, okay. Yeah, it's really rare. I know. You know, we have to kind of cast the wide net. We're a system, we're an interconnected whole being in an environment, you know, in a relationship, and you know, it's complexity, and it's really amazing and beautiful when you kind of settle into that idea. I definitely try to be respectful and actually hear what my patients are saying, because oftentimes they'll be onto something about them that's important, and we absolutely want to hear that, and we want to find out where they got their knowledge. I always say, when somebody will ping me with an idea, can you tell me where you got that from? Send me the link, or if you found a paper, you know, download the paper if you can and email it to me. And I want to take the time to actually, you know, be aware of what people are reading, but also see, is it appropriate in this case? And absolutely, if it is, I'm going to honor it, and we'll build on it. It won't be the panacea that somebody might be hoping for. And it might be a little bit off. Sometimes it might be a little bit off direction, but many times it's a pertinent piece of the whole. So, you know, I think that's what I can say.
I think you're right. You know, patients, they teach us too. They find some things that are interesting.
Yeah.
A woman came yesterday with a homeopathic growth hormone spray that was FDA cleared, and that's what it said on the internet. But it was a multi-level marketing company, and they're not all bad, but there's these red flags like that.
Yes.
But I'd never heard of it, so the fact that I took the time to look it up with her next to me, just validate her and made her more confident that I care about her opinion, her intuition.
Absolutely. And, you know, maybe, I mean, it's up to you to decide, is it safe? Is it something that needs to be stopped? I mean, you just have to kind of think about it through that lens. I mean, some things that unfortunately that are labeled homeopathic these days are not necessarily. So, yeah.
Well, we had the pleasure of talking to Joe Pizzorno about toxicity, and the more that I speak to experts like yourself about toxicity, the less I'm excited about it. I think I didn't want to understand how bad it really was.
I understand that for sure.
For women, it may actually be, for women and children, it may be actually be more of an issue. Mm-hmm. Do you see people getting more and more toxic when you're doing these advanced tests? Because I know we all talk about, we're seeing sicker and sicker people in our clinics. Are you seeing the toxicity burdens increase, and how are you seeing it manifest in women?
Yeah, toxins inform every condition that we see in practice. I mean, it's just the bottom line. Everything that we're seeing has some kind of a toxic influence. It's just a matter of, you know, how much in that particular case. And yes, we're absolutely seeing a rise.
Your wording is fascinating, Kara. Toxins inform every condition. I've never heard of it said like that. That's
true.
That's a very unique way to say that.
Yeah, it is. I mean, all of us need to be exquisitely mindful as we possibly can of our toxic burden, our exposures. Yeah, there's no doubt. I mean, the underlying mechanisms of toxicity, you know, what any toxin does, be it, you know, persistent organic pollutants or mercury or cadmium or gadolinium from a contrast CAT scan or something like that, all of them, at the molecular level, promote oxidative stress. I mean, they can damage DNA and alter expression. They can, and that oxidative stress can lead to inflammation, sort of like the underlying pathogenesis of cardiovascular disease, which you're focusing on. Those are the toxins will amplify those mechanisms.
Yeah, I saw Mark Houston talk about that 20 years ago, and it stuck with me. Yeah. And again, the more I learn about this toxicity, this toxic body burden, the hormone disruption, it's definitely scary. So the key is just not to get them in the first place.
Do our best. I mean, we have to protect ourselves. One of the cool things, so in the laboratory, we released a really great panel assessing organotoxins. So pesticides, plasticizers, volatile organic solvents, et cetera, just this good broad panel. And we were very excited about it, but being in medical education meant that I really needed to do the drill down into the literature and figure out what this means and what levels are alarming, et cetera, et cetera. And when we were doing that work in the lab, you had to scrape us up off the floor every day. I mean, it was a morose time. So what came, we were really excited and felt empowered by these new assays we were making available, because before that you could get them through CDC, basically, they weren't clinically available. So we were super excited about it. But then when you go into the literature, I mean, there's a new study coming out like every 5 minutes on how damaging they are, and far-reaching, and the half-life, like how long some of these things stay in the body. Well, they stay in their decades because your liver's like, what the heck is this molecule? I've never encountered it, because it's some man-made thing, that's not meant for human exposure. It's not meant for exposure on the earth. And so we got really depressed, and so we had to think about, how can we kind of language it? How can we position the fact that we all have toxic burdens? Like, how can we position it in a way that is less fatalistic? And so one of the things we know is that we can reduce exposure. We have actually a little presentation that all of our patients watch. A lot of our patients already know the content, but for some people it's new, and it's how you reduce your exposure. But the other really cool thing is the interventions that we're doing at baseline. Like, even before you get into specific detox protocols, you're cleaning up the gut, you're getting people pooping, you're working on liver, you're making sure micronutrient status is up to snuff, you're introducing, a really smart diet that, even if you don't label it detox, if you've got a lot of greens in it, if you've got a lot of, colorful plants, if you've got the appropriate, berries and nuts and seeds and oils, etc. All of these things that we're doing at the very foundational entry level in a functional medicine investigation are supporting detoxification. So if you remember, at the molecular level, any toxin, regardless of what it is going to only have a set number of damaging things it can do. We can counter those things immediately with our diet, and research actually bears that out. So persistent organic pollutants can promote increased prostaglandins, so increased arachidonic acid-derived prostaglandins and leukotrienes, and has been associated with asthma. So some of these really bad inflammatory actors associated with asthma, and this study was looking at asthma, but they're associated with cardiovascular disease and autoimmunity and so forth, could be countered by just adding fish, and fish oil into your diet. So we're always, as soon as you kind of come into this world and start thinking about it and using some of these tools, you're already protecting yourself from toxin exposures and working at mitigating the damage and getting them out.
And do you feel that really for women and for children, they maybe are most vulnerable for all this? And how do you help women understand how toxicity, inflammation, and her hormones, how do you tie all that together for someone? Do you have a great description you could share with us?
Well, what were for kids, they're still developing. and they're just actively dividing cells and growing and laying down new neurons all of the time. And so that's such a vulnerable, when DNA and cells are just so actively dividing, when metabolism is up and running. I mean, those are the vulnerable points. With women, I mean, I guess it's really kind of a cliche that we're kind of the canary in the coal mine. I mean, we have really complex endocrine systems. Guys escaped basically needing a hormone. No, not
and
quite.
Some men no brain cells either.
Right. Oh my goodness, that's terrible. Really not quite, but the complexity of our endocrine system and how vulnerable it is to disruption, and of course our breast tissue and the vulnerability therein is, really and the fact that we're carrying babies and making ova, and I mean toxins actively disrupt sperm production and spermatogenesis, and can in many different ways. But it is true that it's not sexy, but women are the canaries in the coal mine, and we tend to experience stuff early and first, and it tends to be misunderstood. The symptoms aren't, a lot of the research, obviously the original research on cardiovascular disease and so forth was done in men, and so there's these set of symptoms that are well known and understood that don't show up in women, or don't always show up in women. And so it's it's difficult. I mean, my job, again, as a functional medicine physician, and yours as well, all of ours, is to really hear and believe and know that it's true what people are presenting with.
So women don't show up like men? Women are not men? They are unique, and we should look at them differently, and we should treat them differently?
Yeah.
The more that I've jumped into the heart health for women, the more stories I've heard about You're
so perfect. That's such a perfect job for you.
God. Oh, thank you. It's a passion, because I saw it in medical school.
Bravo, you.
I saw women come in for abdominal pain, get their gallbladder out, and actually had heart attacks. And they got missed. You hear the stories of people will say, well, my sister, my aunt, my mother, she was super lean, no body fat, you did yoga every day, marathon runner, cholesterol was normal, and dropped out of a heart attack or had a major stroke. And we don't think that should happen. And it's because the tools we're using for heart disease for women aren't sophisticated enough. And that's one thing I've always loved about talking with you is you know all of these other tools. You've been deep in the lab. You also do it in clinic. And the ability you have to really dance in both worlds, it makes you a great clinician and a great teacher. There's very few of you out there.
Wow.
And I think we need more of them.
I should summit with you every day, Mark. This is like a really nice self-esteem booster.
Well, there's a reason we're talking. It's selfishly, it's an hour for me to get to talk to you. We're just going to share it with the world, but it's just a real pleasure to have the time together. And a lot of viewers probably don't know that naturopathic medicine in medical school, MD and ND, their first 2 years are very, very similar. They're very rigorous clinical sciences. You get more nutrition than we get.
That's right.
They're very similar training. And I think the naturopathic model is a better systems analysis. They look at people as this whole organism. And I think in medicine, we've lost that.
Right. Certainly, I think some medical schools, I think some naturopathic schools can do a better job at just at the whole system medicine. And I think while most medical schools have unfortunately compartmentalized, some are working at bridging it. I mean, really, ideally, not to push the Institute for Functional Medicine forward, but they really have something. They've got something with the matrix and the timeline, and using the nodes and really thinking through a patient case, relying on those particular tools. So even though I had a naturopathic medical training, I mean, I learned the same kind of charting as you did, and it's inadequate for systems medicine, for functional medicine. So the SOAP note is inadequate. We need the deeper tools to be able to capture complexity. And that's what IFM really brought forward, in addition to all this fabulous education and great clinicians teaching it. And I wish that I had those tools in school. So yes, we're taught the interconnected whole, but then how do we translate that into action? How do we think it through in our charts? What kind of chart are we using that can support it? And this is all still evolving.
Yes.
So yes, on one hand, I did have a really great education in some arenas, but one day perhaps we'll be using the matrix in our schools.
It's interesting you say that. A woman came to see us last week that had a heart attack and had a stent. And I was reading her note from the cardiologist that began with her chest pain the day that she got her stent. And then when I started questioning her, I asked her, well, where was your mother at when she was pregnant? What was her life stresses? Were you vaginally born, C-section? Did she have antibiotics? Did you get antibiotics? Did you have the vaccinations? And were you bottle fed, breastfed? And she stopped. She said, why are you asking all this? I had a heart attack last week. All my cardiologists want to know is what happened that day. Why are you asking me all of these other things? She loved it, but she just realized at that moment, this was going to be a different relationship, a different experience. And
yeah, you're your history. You are your history. And it's exquisitely important, particularly if somebody has a heart attack after a stent. I mean, for crying out loud, you really want to get a good blow-by-blow detail of, from where they come.
And that's the beauty of the model that you have in clinic. We do a similar visit. Our visits we have a lot of people fly in. They spend an hour and a half with me. They have to see my nutritionist or you don't get to see me. Yep. It has to be a team evaluation. We have 6 stations they go through to look at all these different aspects of their health.
Wow.
And,
nice.
The cognitive, the cardiovascular, heart rate variability, spirometry, EKG, ultrasound.
I love it.
Heart maths. And it's just this 360 approach of people. And, we can't do it for everybody, but once we start doing it for some people, we can then find a way to do it for more people. And
how long is the first office visit? Like the total?
Well, we have people come in this beautiful area for the morning, and they spend the morning with us, talking to me, talking to my nutritionist, the health coach, and we start some of the stations. The next morning is when we start the testing. And I do extensive testing like you do as well. Some of it I don't do on the front end because I like to clean up the train, so to speak.
Fair enough.
You do some of this and then test. But I love the advanced testing that you've developed and that you're using now. Once you understand how to use it, the insight it gives you is so many layers beyond what a health fair test do.
Indeed.
I'm kind of shocked we're still doing health fairs. The data is pretty clear. They don't really change anybody's health.
Right.
And it's just so woefully inadequate. But
wow.
There's so much great way to look at other people. When you have a woman who comes to see you, and I know this is the question I have, they say, Dr. Kara, what do I eat? What diet should I be on? I've tried paleo, I've tried keto, I've tried intermittent fasting. None of them work for me. What diet should I be on? How do you engage that discussion?
Well, most of our patients do come to us having cycled through a handful of diets. I mean, I remember back in the day, it wasn't that long ago, it was a big deal to pull people off of gluten. And now probably the majority of our patients are no longer eating gluten. It's kind of amazing to observe that evolution. We also have a required nutrition consult. It's structured a little bit different after we do the therapeutic prescription, then they jump over. So, I'm going to be leaning on history and labs for me to determine what I think is metabolically appropriate for a given individual. What are they presenting with? Are we looking at small intestinal bacterial overgrowth? Are we looking at, some kind of an inflammatory bowel disease? Or no, is that not there? Are we looking at, weight loss resistance? And why is that? Is it weight loss resistance because, there's something going on with the thyroid, or the whole HPA axis is HPA-T axis is dysregulated? Or are we looking at, metabolic imbalances, micronutrients? Are micronutrient deficiencies slowing down metabolism? Do they have food sensitivities, delayed food sensitivities, or are they, and they're eating those foods and they're, causing a whole lot of inflammation that's going to be a problem with metabolism? So there's a lot of reasons. I mean, an optimal diet for an individual takes some level of investigation.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah.
And it's great that you look for that personalized, what should that person be eating?
Yeah. Well, for best outcome, it really needs to be combed through, and then we can couple it with the lab data and then just really dial it in nicely. Certainly, we're going to be going in general with everybody that we're going anti-inflammatory. We're doing, lots of really good fats. We tend to recommend some type of intermittent fasting if it's just, don't eat after dinner and wait until the morning, things like, there are some underpinnings that are consistent throughout our dietary prescriptions, but it's individualized. I mean, and then you see good outcome. I mean, weight loss resistance is women who are experiencing that, and they're pushing themselves and pushing themselves and pushing themselves. Oh my gosh.
Oh,
It's
Dr.
really
Kara, it's just calories in equals calories out, right?
Is that it?
Yeah, that's all it is.
Oh my God, I've been wasting so much time at this visualization stuff.
Well, don't you feel many, if not most, of your female patients were told that by a doctor at some point?
Yeah, of course.
Is that, ma'am, if you would just eat less and
Yes.
exercise more, it'll all
Yes.
magically be better. What
Yes.
a myth perpetrated on women.
That's right. Or stop eating fat. I mean, do you remember, when the no fat craze was in, I remember myself, when I was younger, and all of a sudden there was this plethora of fat-free foods. Like,
Yeah.
I remember being a kid, buying like packages of Twizzlers, being like, wow, like cognitive dissonance. Wow, if I eat these Twizzlers and these Snackwell cookies, I'll actually lose weight.
Yeah. So when women come to see you and say, what do you mean it's not calories in, calories out? Where do you take that discussion for them to help them understand beyond that?
What do I do? Well, obviously not all obviously they're not all created equal. I mean, I guess so food is information ultimately.
Yes.
I mean, calories are, I don't add, maybe in some distant place in the race, calories could possibly be relevant, but they're way off in the distance, because we're looking at a bite of food as a packet of really important information that's going to direct traffic. And so we know, for instance, that, if you're going to eat, if you eat fat, there's going to be really fabulous hormones that are released that trigger satiety hormones and, make you feel full and good. And we also know that that fat is going to be, hopefully if it's well chosen, it's going to exert an anti-inflammatory effect. So your body isn't going to be, when we're under chronic inflammation, our body will break down protein, i.e. our muscle, to liberate those amino acids to make the biomolecules to push forward the inflammation. I mean, inflammation is really catabolic. If you're struggling with a chronic condition and you're inflamed, you're breaking down muscle and using all sorts of really good parts, brain, your brain is fat and protein, and liberating it to be able to fight the inflammatory enemy as far as the body is concerned. So when we shut that off, we can see metabolism sort of freed, and we can see the ratio, the ratio of fat and muscle, change on the body, and we can see appetites restored to balance. I mean, one of the reasons people will overeat is because they're in need of certain kind of, certain micronutrients that they're just simply not getting. Actually, there's a number of reasons, but that's certainly one of them. So food fundamentally is exquisitely sophisticated information that's feeding us at so many levels. And if we use it in the right way, if we dial in what's appropriate for us, we'll lose weight, and calories are just a non-issue, just a non-starter. And people are blown away by that. I'm sure you find it in your practice. People are blown away. I'm eating so much and I've lost 20 pounds. How can that be?
We have a picture of two grocery carts that have the same amount of calories in them, and one is almost empty and the other's overflowing with broccoli, cauliflower, and carrots. And like, a calorie is not just a calorie. I love your packets of information. That's really what food is.
Yeah, and it's ridiculously sophisticated. I mean, it's more sophisticated than any drug, with its one molecule in its delivery system. It's infinitely sophisticated, and it has all, tentacles of far-reaching effects for our whole being.
Carol, will you expand on that? How food is more complicated than a pharmaceutical? I'd love to pursue that further.
Well, because there are many, 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 many biomolecules in one type of food. Like if you analyze broccoli, or if you look at, I was just talking to somebody earlier today about the, curcumin, turmeric, the spice, and all the curcuminoids, present in it. All of our plant foods are complex in the flavonoids, in the polyphenol compounds that are in them. And, the other aspects of them, there's a little bit of protein, and, there's other micronutrients, vitamins, minerals, and so forth. So these just, the complexity is astonishing. I mean, we haven't even characterized, all of the molecules in the foods that we're consuming. I mean, we're still learning about new ones, and let alone understanding their effects. But our cells evolved steeped in that kind of information. I mean, it's supposed to be there, and it's supposed to be there, in concert with many of them, not isolated and given, as a single, molecule as we do in pharma. Now, that said, sometimes there's a place for that, but we know that it's short term, and we're paying attention when we use that kind of strong push. But yeah, it's a beautiful symphony of events, the information we're deriving from our meals.
Oh, I'm going to look at my broccoli for dinner so much differently now. But I love how you think about that. That's the clinical scientist in you, looking at broccoli and looking at curcumin as this multi-complex superfood. And
with
that's
lots of information.
That really helps you understand
directing traffic. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and just directing our microbiome to further direct traffic. Because food is food is prebiotic. I mean, food is going to, influence the direction of our microbiome in a big way. And so is it moving in our favor, or is it moving against us?
Well, I love that the food's packets of information, and you want to give the ladies in your gut good information, or you want to misguide them. And so it's really your choice on a daily basis.
Yeah.
Well, Dr. Kara Fitzgerald, so much wisdom, so much clinical and science knowledge. It's a real treat for anyone to be able to come see you. How do our viewers find out more about you?
They can head over to our website. We've got loads of information there, and it's just simply drkarafitzgerald.com. We're on Instagram. Dr. Kara Fitzgerald, I think, is our Instagram. You can find us there. We're really busy and active. We're on Facebook as well. We have newsletters. We have a newsletter for regular people. We also have a newsletter for clinicians. You can certainly get both if you want both kinds of information. And of course, I do a podcast, which is fun. So that's over at our website.
Well, I get the clinician newsletter, but I'm going to go sign up for the consumer newsletter.
Yeah, do it. We've got some good stuff coming out.
You always provide great information.
Thank you.
What are you excited about?
So do you,
next?
actually. I get yours. I'm on yours. I'm on your list too.
What are you excited about? What's next for you, and what are you pointing your arrow towards?
Well, we're pretty excited. So there's two things that I'm really, really stoked about. One is that we have a fabulous clinical development program that is, it's just been very, very rewarding because we have a brick and mortar practice, which I'm in my office now. But it's a relatively small footprint. Our practice
literally brick and mortar.
Literally brick and mortar. That's right. That's right. Literally. I'm in an old mill building overlooking the Putatuck River. It's pretty. Awesome. It's nice. But we also have a strong virtual space. So our nutrition team is virtual, but the two physicians come in and are here with me, and some of our support staff are here. But anyway, so we use the Zoom platform all of the time for our physician rounds and for our clinician rounds and so forth. So opening those doors and having clinicians transitioning and training in functional medicine to come and observe us in that virtual space has been fun. It is so fun. So I'm excited about that. And the other thing that I'm really excited about is we're in the middle of researching. So the methylation diet and lifestyle ebook that you mentioned at the beginning, we are researching it. It's underway now at my alma mater, the Healthcare Institute at NUNM. We're looking at epigenetic changes. So that's like a whole nother topic, but we're looking basically at whether this diet and lifestyle program will change gene expression. So we test at baseline, and then they follow an 8-week program. It's rigorous, and then we test them at the end, and we test them midway as well. One of the areas I'm particularly interested in is the anti-aging potential of modifying the epigenome. So there's an epigenetic clock. Actually, there are 3 clocks, all from Steve Horvath at UCLA, all out of his laboratory, and they're very reliable. And diet and lifestyle can favorably influence them, but our question is, can an intentional diet and lifestyle designed to optimize epigenetic expression, can we tweak it in a powerful way?
Wow.
So yeah, it's super exciting, Mark.
Very exciting.
We're hoping that, so it's actively happening now, and we should be, crunching our numbers, looking at results in spring.
Well, that's what it takes, is an excellent scientist and a superb clinician to put the future in front of us. So Dr. Karen Fitzgerald, it's always a pleasure, and thank you so very much for your time today.
Thank you. It was fun.